Welcome into another edition of Spits and Suds. So glad you can join us. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much for a great year of Spits and Suds in 2023. We're super excited to bring you some awesome programs in 2024, but not done yet. And joining us to talk about last night's game, some other things happening in the NHL, he's our man, EP Ringside, Shap Shots, D Magazine, great article recently on Logan Stankoven and Maverick Bork. And it's Sean Shapiro joining us. Happy holidays, my friend.
Happy holidays, Gavin. It's good to be here talking hockey. Yesterday was one of like the best hockey days of the year, right? Like I don't know how
Yes.
many other people nerded out the way I did yesterday, but World Junior started at 6 a.m. There was 4 games that I could watch throughout the day, take a nice break to get some dinner and relax, and then pop up on the couch and flip through 14 NHL games last night. So
Yeah,
last night was a great hockey day.
it was. Let me ask your opinion on that NHLPA rule that Toronto got fined on in the past for
Mhm.
leaving early, as far as the visiting team has to leave that morning, cannot leave the night prior, which is what NHL teams do. And it was interesting to see the scores from last night. Arizona beats
Yeah.
Cardinals. Cardinals. Arizona, geez. Arizona beats Colorado. Winnipeg goes down. Anaheim just manhandles Vegas. So, it was almost like the start of the season where like the first couple of games, you're like, all right, it's too early to really see anything. And you kind of see those crazy upsets. And last night was just kind of a topsy-turvy night in the NHL, and I was wondering your opinion on the day of travel, and do you think that affects
Yeah.
the teams?
Well, I don't know. We're about to learn this right now because I just pulled it up. So, of the 14 games last night,
Yep.
New Jersey, Columbus, home team won. New York, Washington, home team won. That's two. Tampa versus Florida, that's the road team won, but Tampa to Florida is not really much of a travel.
Yeah.
Ottawa to Toronto, the road team won, but that's also not nearly Ottawa to Toronto really isn't that bad actually, travel wise. Boston, um, road team won. Boston beat Buffalo. Pittsburgh cranked the Islanders last night. The Where we're seeing these East Coast games, I'm not seeing as much. Like honestly,
Yeah.
like East Coast travel is not bad. That's
Right.
something where like Stars fans, the Stars in general, kind of have the. We talk about them having the toughest travel schedule in the league,
Yep.
and it's true because you don't have things like last night. Um, it's a 1 hour flight, not even a 1 hour flight from for Pittsburgh to go to Long Island to get there.
Right.
Like it's 45 minutes in the air. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Ottawa to Toronto, 45 minutes in the air. Um,
I mean,
Dallas
Florida,
doesn't have
Tampa
anything
might
like
be
yeah.
20 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing like that. I mean, even like San Jose going to LA, that's a short little flight.
Yep.
Vegas to Anaheim's a short little flight. Seattle to Calgary, it's a bit of a flight, but it's still short in general. Um, Honestly, like one of the only teams that really had a tough travel last night were Detroit to Minnesota. That's not an easy day of one, just going time zone and everything like that, but still not egregious. Um, it's I think the league does a good job of keeping these travel partners close on it,
Yep.
but I do think there's some common sense in play here where uh you should like I think there's some common sense at play here where you should be allowed to travel after 5 o'clock on Tuesday. Like I think that's something that you
Yeah.
should be allowed to do. And I think the players should have the choice of it if like you want to get there and just get there. But like do you remember five maybe 4 or 5 years back, the Stars played their first game out of the break in Arizona, and there was takeoff issues, right?
Yep.
I found the plane. I don't know if you remember this. And so the Stars actually held their morning skate in Frisco because they had to do that. But Tyler Sagan had taken the option to meet the team in Arizona because players typically have the option to meet the team at the location of the game on Wednesday if they don't want to go. Like for example, if you're like the amount of players who are, I'm sure, like Toronto. I'm sure Toronto last night. I'm sure there's a bunch of Ottawa Senators who are from the Toronto area who just stayed in Toronto and met the team there and didn't fly back to Ottawa to fly to Toronto, right? So there was a couple years back where the Stars had the situation where Tyler Seguin was all by himself in Arizona waiting for the team
Yep.
on this. I don't think it's the. I do think we put too many games on that night. I think it was, as I said, it was fun and everything like that. I do think this should be one of those where you come out of the break and like there's 14 games last night. It should have been 14 games tonight. What it should have been like 4 games last night, and you should have been smart about the travel partners of it, where it's like, okay, we can do a New York game, a Devils Flyers game.
Right.
We can do a LA Anaheim game. Like, I think that's what you should have done last night, where the travel partners would have been super easy, and then you do the load up tonight on on a Thursday. But that's how I would tweak it if I had the power to do so.
Right.
Because I think then you could still focus on just a couple games coming out last night, and
I think
the full
also
slate this evening.
maybe a fair addendum to that rule is if the flight is more than 90 minutes long, team can decide, whether to take off after 5 p.m. the day before the game.
Or you know what? Or you put a rule on where you're not going to have games with more than a 90-minute flight.
There you go.
You could just like on the day after coming out of the break, you can't have the teams must have less than max flight time must be 75 minutes or something like that.
Right.
So
as I said on the post game pod after the game, we've all taken flights, and whether it's 20 minutes or 45 minutes, it does kind of grind on you a little bit. And the other thing I'd say is it affects your daytime nap. And hockey players are routine, and they love the routine of the NHL. They're so used to it. So used to early morning practices, early morning skates, and just game day routines. And when you throw that off, that can affect you, certainly.
I do think there should be a rule on I do think like there's certain common sense things, and obviously the Avalanche would get pissed, like the Colorado Avalanche would not be happy with me suggesting this rule, but I do think you should have rules like you can't travel. Colorado can't host. Now they didn't. They went to Arizona last night, but like Colorado can't host the day after the break. It's not fair to from a athlete standpoint to ask someone to fly into that elevation on the day of a game and play.
Yeah.
I know they do it in preseason and it's absolutely awful. Those games are terrible. So don't, but I think that's like, there's a couple like common sense things in the schedule that you just need to apply because you can make it work, but it's just, there's some that feel a bit stretched, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And a reminder, excited for the future Sean Shapiro article, The Art of the Nap.
yes.
How players can go down so easily and just get into a routine.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the game. Let's get your thoughts.
Yeah.
One thing I said on the post-game pod, I just felt as though it was like kind of going through the motions, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but one thing I will say, Sean, is that if there is something to criticize about the team that I'm seeing is I don't see the versatility in that. What I love about Vegas is some nights they can be physical. Some nights they can score 5 on you. Some nights they can have elite goaltending. Some nights the defense shuts it down. Sometimes they're an offensive powerhouse. I just feel as though, like, last night to me was a perfect game where a little chippiness in front of the net or, a hard hit against the boards might get the boys going a little bit, the legs flaring a little bit. And I just felt as though I didn't see anything that changed the momentum of last night's game.
Yeah, I watched I went through and rewatched that one this morning, just to kind of make sure I had still the same opinion. I still do have the same opinion on this game. I really believe they just got goalied last night.
Yeah.
Like I think last night was a like by traditional metrics, they outshot them 40-30. The natural stat trick, looking at the scoring chances were 31-11. At even strength, if we look at across the entire board, the scoring chances were 37-24. St. Louis really only got stuff done on special teams. And like at 5-on-5, like the Stars, once again, this is using natural stat trick metrics, had 11 high danger chances to 2. And now, while high danger chances aren't always the greatest measure because of how they're registered, it's more of a reflection of where the shot is taken from than how great the shot is. They were like the Stars were the better team last night. Like I really I watched that game and I go through it, and it's one of those where it to me it's one of those tip your hat to Joel Hofer games where Hofer played great. The Stars, maybe you can nitpick about some finishing here and there, but you play that game like because hockey's a series sport, right? Like we always determine like the reason hockey is great in the series format is like, oh, we believe the best team will win out over the randomness of the chaos. If Dallas and St. Louis played that game 7 times, Dallas would win 6 of them. So I I look at it that way, where I have no need for alarm off a game where you got goalie. I tip my hat to Joel Hofer, and I I even struggle to find the finishing issue with it. If you want to talk energy, you want to do that, that's fine. But once again, Gavin, I'm like a broken record on this. How many times have we talked about sometimes this team just looks flat in the
Yeah.
Jamie Benn era, and it's just one of those. It was just sometimes they look like that, and I don't even think they were bad last night. It's just
Yeah.
that's my thought on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And candidly, I mean, it kind of sent me down a Joel Hofer rabbit hole last night,
Yeah.
and that could be a really good 1-2 combo. Hofer, they put him back in. He played well against Florida, and then played really well last night. He's only 23, and they have Bennington there, but it's a nice little 1-2 combo. I mean, for all that, there was a coach bump or a bump in St. Louis, because if you look at the NHL standings, and we were wondering about the Central Division, and it seems as though the Central Division, Sean, has really woken up, because as we look this morning, Arizona in a wild card, Nashville in a wild card, and I think 1 point back St. Louis.
Yeah. Arizona is
It's a great story.
It's a great story. Um
And all of a sudden, that
it's
5,000 seat arena, Sean, is like a place you don't want to go.
well, and it's gonna be one of the weirdest like one of the weird realities of the Coyotes' success and everything. We can have a much greater conversation about this later in the year and everything, but like their success is not good for the NHL bottom line right now, because there's just and this is not me shitting, this is not me jumping on the Coyotes, this is just the reality of it. While that building for a playoff game is going to be electric, you're going to
Yeah.
get 5,000 people, people are going to be on top of you. um it takes 4 games of Coyotes takes 4 games of Coyotes revenue, and I know this because I've talked to people about this before. It would take 4 games of Coyotes revenue to replace to match the revenue from one playoff game of St. Louis or Minnesota or Seattle. That's just the reality of it. And so when you're talking about, and I know this is a sport, we're supposed to enjoy it, but when you're also talking about a business world and a flat cap and you want money to go up and everything like that, and when it comes to the playoffs, there's revenue share. So the two teams who play each other. So whoever gets the Coyotes is going to make less money. It's we're gonna have to have a deeper conversation about
Yeah.
the pros and cons of the Coyotes season later in the year, because it's a big story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hey, we also had something awesome happen in the NHL, and we're going to jump around just on different
Yeah.
things. But at the same time, Chris Letang last night, 5 assists in one period, ended up with 6 assists, tied for the most ever in a game by a blue liner. And I mean,
Yeah.
if Chris Letang was one of, I mean, he's not the biggest guy, and he's had some injury issues, but I mean, just a terrific defenseman in Pittsburgh.
I mean, he's one of the, like, if you're in Pittsburgh, you don't ever forget it, but he's you talk about Crosby and Malkin always get
Yep.
obviously get their flowers properly and everything like that. But I mean, Letang has been there he's been part of that core 3 that have been there and won 3 cups and everything like that. Like, he is a underrated defender, I think only in reputation, because of who he plays with and because of who he plays with and how it kind of gets buried that behind you talk about Crosby and Malkin, and then you only have so much time left on the page for Chris Letang. And I think that's just the natural thing about it. I mean, one of the wild things about this is something that'd be fascinating to me. It's so Chris Letang has to 6 assists or at last night, right? Five of them in the second
Yeah.
period. He only had one shot on goal. like, like it was kind of just it was
Point guard
the
in that
type of
thing.
yeah, like I mean of his assists, he had one, two, three. Three of them were primary assists. So it's kind of a like he was good, right?
Yeah.
Like he was great last night. You're watching the game, but he was really good. And at the same time, like because I watched a little bit of that game in my flipping around of games last night. At the same time, you're like, is this isn't the like offensive like puck gravitation that you would expect when I say 6 assists. Like he was
Right.
good as he normally is. It was just kind of everything went right for the points to match to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. In your years covering hockey, had you seen something that happened Saturday where the Stars got an early Christmas gift, scoring 2 goals within 15 seconds, let's say, to pull off, I mean, fans were on their feet in Nashville, not for
Yeah.
that reason, because they were ready. And you're doing it against UC Saros, which was fascinating.
Yeah, that was I haven't seen a finish like that at the NHL level.
Yeah.
That's I've seen. I mean, even at any level, that time frame is difficult to achieve. But the NHL level, NHL teams are so well structured. Defensively, they should play to the score better. Like that's um, that's a remarkable finish. And I tweeted this when it happened. Like everyone says, when the game's on the line, you need a goal. You need Yanni Hakanpää and Esa Lindell on the ice, right? So
Of course. Yeah. I just couldn't
that's
believe
that.
the first goal. It's like, of course, I mean,
Yeah,
that you're putting a lot
yeah,
of pressure and
yeah.
great job by Craig Smith cleaning it up. But, and there's just a melee in front of the net. The second goal, I'm like, how does that happen?
Well, it's also like if they didn't score those goals, right? If they don't score,
Yeah.
there's a Twitter contingent looking at the personnel on the ice and being like, "How did you do this? What's going on, Pete? Why are these the guys on the ice
Yeah.
when
Good point.
we needed one? Like like why is Craig Smith on the ice when we need a goal?"
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I mean, it was a blistering shot from Yanni Hakanpää, and that's
Yeah, but
something
like
also we don't see.
yes, it was Yanni Hakanpää's first goal of the season.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah, I know. I bet the boys were happy after that one. That
yeah,
must have been
yeah,
a
yeah,
nice
yeah.
flight home. Okay, so one of the things we try to do on Spits and Suds is, try to answer some questions. And a couple people hit me up during that game regarding there was 1 point, Stars on a power play. UC Saros loses his stick. It actually gets kind of stuck, and Nashville player grabs it, hands it back to UC Saros, and they said, "Why isn't that a penalty, Gavin?" And I said, "Well, I mean, we have a goalie coming on the program, Sean Shapiro, to clarify." And it really is an interesting rule that's not talked about much as far as how goalie loses his stick, what is a penalty and what's not a penalty.
So I know all of this actually in depth because as a goalie, a beer league goalie still myself, you learn all these rules as a kid
Yeah.
growing up and what you can and can't do. So um, when it comes to a goalie stick, first of all, another interesting rule that I actually once had a coach yell at me at, and I ended up being right when I was like
A
12 or
little, I
13
could
years old.
picture a little Sean
Yeah,
Shapiro being
yeah,
like, "I told you
yeah.
so, coach."
Yeah. Well, a goalie is the only player allowed to play with a broken stick. I don't know if you know that
No,
rule.
I didn't. That's
So,
interesting.
so a goalie is allowed to play with a broken stick. I was 12 or 13 years old playing Pee Wee hockey or whatever the age was, and I actually broke my stick in a game. And my coach kept yelling at me to get rid of it because it was a penalty, and I refused to get rid of it, and I didn't get a penalty. So I was told my coach he was wrong. It was great.
Yeah.
But the from the stick perspective, a goalie can use if a goalie loses his stick, a player can get him and hand him a goalie stick. They can the player can hand their stick to the goalie. We've seen times before where the defenseman will hand their stick to the goalie, and then a forward might hand their stick to the defenseman. And a player is allowed to pick up a goalie stick on the ice and carry it to the goalie. You're allowed to have a player. The only time a player is allowed to handle two sticks is if they are carrying a player stick and a goalie stick, because you in theory could have a player bring the backup goalie stick from the bench to the goalie mid game. That is allowed too. The only thing you are not allowed to do is you're not allowed to throw a stick to the goalie. You are allowed to
gently slide.
You'll see like I think you and I were talking before we went there. Like
We
there's a
saw it
scenario
last
like
night,
where you
yeah.
mentioned where goalie might lose a stick and the defenseman might use his stick to slide the goalie stick back to him. You're allowed to do that. You're not allowed to throw the stick with your hand. That is the rule book on it. And basically at the end of the day, it comes down to the goalie plays by a different set of rules on that. A player is not allowed to. A player, like hypothetically, say you have a face-off and a center loses his stick, his winger is not allowed to pick it up and give it to him. A player is not allowed to carry two player sticks at once, but you can hold a goalie stick if you're in the act of delivering it to your goalie.
Interesting. All right, a couple quickies before Sean has to go. Scott Wedgwood makes $1 million a year, contract up after this season. I mean, holding the fort down. Good to hear Jim Nils say they're going to actually take their time with Jake Ottinger based on Wedgwood's play, but Jake Ottinger is making improvements. Is Scott Wedgwood earning himself a nice little contract?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott Wedgwood is back in Dallas next year. I think that's one of the things that's kind of played out this way, where he made $1 million. Probably next year will be in a kind of a similar spot. I don't think anyone will look at Scott Wedgwood as the thing the Stars need to avoid is they need to learn the lessons of Anton Khudobin. And what I mean by this is the bubble run. Everyone gave Anton Khudobin a ton of credit for the bubble run, and he stepped in and played well. But the reality was the 2019-20 and 2018-19 Anton Khudobin was an outlier. He was good. He was a good 1B, but those two were outliers from his entire career. Anton Khudobin was never supposed to be paid like a starting goalie making $3.33 million per year. Right. And so the Stars need to learn the mistakes of what happened with Anton Khudobin, where if you can bring Scott Wedgwood back for $1 million, $1.5 million, maybe 1.75, you're all over it. You don't want to get into the scenario where you are making the mistake of investing 3 years, more than $2 million into a 31. I think so. Scott Wedgwood is now, let's see, he's now 31, goalie who's going to be 32 and everything like that. So I think there is, you have to be smart about how you do it, but he's played himself into be part of the plans as long as you financially handle it correctly from a Dallas perspective.
That makes sense. So last year in the World Juniors, 2022, we had Logan Stankoven, and this year, the World Juniors, as you mentioned, to kick up, and it's a really cool thing. I love watching prospects from other teams. I love watching prospects if they're in it for the Dallas Stars. I remember seeing a young Denis Gurianov flying down the wing for Team Russia, and I was like, wow, this is going to be awesome. Didn't work out, but it's just fun to watch, and it's a great brand of hockey. Team USA is stacked this year. I know you're a big fan of the World Juniors.
I am. Yes, it's been a fun tournament so far. I mean, it's first couple days are always there can be some blowouts like there was with Canada and Latvia yesterday. But as a goalie nerd, once again, I've been loving watching what Adam Gajan has done for the for the Slovaks. He's a guy. He's a name who Stars fans are going to know frustratingly so in the future in Chicago. Adam
Yeah.
Guyan, um, Macklin Celebrini, who I know you saw
Yep.
in person at BU
Yep.
earlier this year. He's just lighting it up for Canada right now. It's a fun tournament, and honestly, the American team, they have a chance to win gold and get this done. And from
Amazing.
a American pride and everything like that, that is it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun tournament to tune into and see where things go on that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great, and it's great seeing USA hockey thriving right now. And you see some of the biggest stars in the NHL, and you're surprised that they're actually from Arizona or California, or it's awesome to see. And you are checking out college hockey today.
I am. I'm headed out to the Great Lakes Invitational, the out in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Nice.
The two games today: Alaska versus Michigan Tech and Michigan State versus Ferris State. Alaska fascinates me because it's an independent team in college hockey that is right on the cusp of putting together a strong enough resume to maybe make the NCAA tournament as an independent. So very fascinating team there. And then Michigan State's a top 5 team in the country right now, and but they've got 4 or 5 guys at World Junior. So it's an interesting. The holiday tournaments for college hockey are always interesting because you get to kind of learn more about the depths of these teams when you
Right.
get some of those young studs out at representing their country.
Will there be a in between ceremony where Michigan Tech celebrates the amazing Dallas Stars career of Chris Connor?
I don't think there will be.
He's one of my favorite
I'm
Dallas Stars of all time. I don't.
I'm sure he's in there like Team Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But I don't think there will be a presentation in Grand Rapids today.
Okay, so when we have more time, I want to do random Dallas Stars from the past.
Yes.
Just because I think, like, Chris Connor was, to me, the smallest guy I've ever seen on the ice. Like, maybe Martin St. Louis, but I mean, it was just awesome to see. And he had a really good minor league career, put up a lot of points, but just couldn't be up at the NHL level. But a former Michigan Tech grad, so I just wanted to get my Chris Connor plug in.
Well, we could have a lot of fun with one thing we could have a lot of fun with is the letting our listeners kind of throw out some random names
Yes.
so that we could kind of see if we got the list ahead of time, like just kind of like get some
Yes.
names from listeners and just kind of
Where are they now?
where are they now? Any stories that come to mind? I think we could have some fun with that.
Well, I like that idea a lot. We'll make that happen. That'll be a lot of fun because there are some names, the Fabian Brunstroms.
Yes.
There are just some names from the past that you're like, oh my God, Philip Boucher. So it's a rabbit hole that I will thoroughly enjoy going down. And great to see a couple people tweeted about We Win Here and also your book prior to that. So some great Christmas gifts under the tree featuring author Sean Shapiro. You, my friend, are a beast. Enjoy the tournament. Thank you so much for joining us on this busy hockey week. We appreciate it. You can support Sean on Twitter/X at Sean Shapiro. EP Ringside Shap Shots is where he has his Substack, where you can subscribe and get some really cool information on the Dallas Stars that you might not be getting elsewhere. Every time you see an article come out in D Magazine, just click, and get those downloads up and show D Magazine that you support local hockey and support Sean. You're a beast, my friend. Happy holidays to you, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Gavin, and we will talk I guess we'll talk in the new year, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the plan?
Oh, absolutely. We'll talk after
So,
the Stars hopefully sweep the Hawks this weekend.
So,
the first
good.
showing officially of Connor Bedard. That'll be.
I mean, I will say this as someone who has seen him in person 4 or 5 times now. He's one of those guys you're going to hate to play against and to see all as often as you do because of how good he is. But he's worth and unfortunately, it's a team where the ticket prices are already hyped up and people sell their tickets to Hawks fans anyway. But this is one of those guys that is, if you're a hockey fan, you want to just come watch this kid play. I mean, it's one of the things. His overtime goal against Winnipeg last night was a perfect example of the way he changes the angle on his shot in the milliseconds before a release are something uh we haven't seen much of in the
Yeah.
NHL. It's impressive, and honestly, it could be the. I don't think every not everyone will be able to replicate it, but as someone who spends their time in the prospect world talking to younger players, I know there's a lot of young players who watch Bedard already just to see how the hell does this guy
Right.
change the angle of the shot like that, and you've got guys who are um, trying to replicate that and learn from what he does so well, and like
Yeah.
it's gonna he's going to have a major impact on the future of the sport.
So what's really interesting, and I didn't know if you saw this quick bite, was they showed it on TV. Jason Dickinson explaining the angle of the stick on faceoffs and what he learned from Vern Fiddler.
I did see that, and
Yes.
I
So we
believe
need to
someone
get
brought up so I believe somebody brought up a story I wrote about that long time ago. So
nice.
it was good to see someone dig through the ancient scrolls for me, and
Yes. Yes.
it's amazing how time flies, Gavin. So
Yeah, and meanwhile, I just picture Fids on his couch, like with a nice Frosty, and trying to figure out how he can get any kind of royalties from this superstar based on.
yeah,
He probably
yeah,
texts Dickinson like, "Man, come on, I should charge for
yeah.
that." All right, go to your hockey
Yes.
tournament, my friend. You're a beast.
Thanks, Gavin. We'll talk soon,
All
man.
right, we'll talk soon. That's going to do it for Spits and Suds. We got some cool episodes coming up. In fact, we're going to drop one tomorrow featuring your Hall of Fame voice of the Rangers, Eric Nadel. A lot of people don't know he actually wanted to be a hockey announcer and has a great, rich hockey history. So we're going to get into the old Dallas Blackhawks playing at Fair Park with chicken wire. It's going to be a great interview. Eric is an amazing storyteller, so expect that to drop tomorrow right here on Spits and Suds. Have a great day, everyone.